Welcome to First Parish in Needham on this History Sunday. We're a Unitarian Universalist congregation founded in 1711 along with the town of Needham. The first church was started in around 1712, but they really didn't get it finished until 1717 or so. So they met in people's houses with guest ministers and so forth. And then finally in 1720, Jonathan Townsend was our settled minister, and we were in the church. We are a proud LGBTQ welcoming congregation, climate justice-seeking green sanctuary, and a level 2 sanctuary supporting congregation for immigrant justice. Whoever you are, whatever your background, and wherever you are participating from, you are welcome here. I'm Jeanette Anderson, and our family moved here in 1970. The church has been a major part of my life, and I've enjoyed serving on many, many committees. The one I'm still serving on is the Archives Committee since 1998. As you know, our congregation is gathering for Sunday services and programming in a hybrid, multi-platform format. Thanks to the outstanding work of the Reopening Task Force, using a scientific evidence-based approach, we are able to create an in-person worship experience that is low risk by having all in-person participants make a reservation, wear a surgical or N95 equivalent mask properly, and only congregate in our ventilated sanctuary and parish hall. Speaking of ventilation and chilly sanctuaries, I want to show you what our ancestors did, our forebears did in the early days. They had little foot warmers like this, and inside there was a little cup, you might say, where they placed hot coals. And then they brought these from home, and then when they broke for noontime, because the service went all day long, business and whatever, they went all day long, then they would get it warmed up at what they call the noon house or at a nearby neighbor. We'll have these out in Parish Hall so you can see them. And one other thing, even if you got a little comfortable and warm and maybe dozed off, there was a tithing man who went around. If you were an unruly teenager, you might get a poke. If you were maybe a gentleman, just a little tap. And if you were a lady, they just tickled this in front of your nose and woke you up. So nobody was allowed to snooze, even if they did get comfortable and warm. Although our buildings remain under certain restrictions due to the COVID-19 pandemic, our faith community welcomes everyone. As Unitarian Universalists, we have an ethical commitment to serving the most vulnerable, which will guide our ongoing work to continue to deliver excellent online programs which complement our in-person ones. We hope all of you will plug into our Zoom gathering opportunities throughout the week, including Zoom social hour after every Sunday service. Those who have registered for a seat at Sunday services and have agreed to follow our COVID-19 precautions are welcome to join a brief in-person social hour in our parish hall, where you will see a mini exhibit of former First Parish ministers set up by the Archives Committee. You can learn more about all that's happening at First Parish by going to our website, uuneedham.org, or by following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. To get Zoom links, learn about outdoor and hybrid religious exploration, and register for an in-person seat at an upcoming service, please sign up for our weekly email newsletter by going to the website and clicking Get Involved Newsletter, or sending your request to office@uuneedham.org. Our sincere hope is that these online, hybrid, and outdoor services and connection opportunities will help us keep the public health precautions required during the pandemic without losing much of the spiritual, social closeness that we treasure in our faith community. If you're watching this service from outside the church, please take a moment now to say hello and introduce yourself in the chat box. Welcome again to everyone, and good morning.
Good works, pass it boldly to a new generation. Our opening hymn, My Life Flows On, an Endless Song, has music from 19th century American Baptist minister Reverend Robert Wadsworth Lowry and lyrics adapted by modern Euro-American singer-songwriter Pete Seeger and his friend Doris Plen. You can find the lyrics in your emailed or print order of service or at number 108 in your gray hymnals. Please join in singing from home or humming here in the sanctuary and the parish hall, My Life Flows On in Endless Song.
Good morning, everyone. This week we're talking a lot about what COVID has looked like for us, what it's meant for us to be far away from the people that we love, what that's even looked like in history. It can be hard when we're separated from the places and the people that bring us joy, that fill our souls with light and love. But it's important to remember that those things aren't ever far away, no matter how much it feels like they are. Today, I am actually in Texas visiting my family. It's something that I didn't get to do during the pandemic so far, and it brings me so much joy to be home. My mother is off camera throwing some treats for her wonderful chickens. My mom got her chickens during the pandemic. I never got to meet them, and now I am. So I thought today, hi Eliza, I would read today's book to her chickens. This is Eliza. She has 2 other friends roaming around. So hopefully they and you can enjoy our book for today. Yeah? Oh, you want to sit with me? No? Okay. Today we're going to be reading I'll Love You From Afar by Rasha Murtada and illustrated by Sasha Haddad. Sorry, I can't see you. You're oh so far away. But don't you worry, I'm in no hurry. My love is here to stay. I miss your hugs and kisses and all our silly games. It's hardly as fun on a seesaw for one. Somehow, it's just not the same. We may not be together, but that's all right, you see. The world is connected, our paths intersected. If not now, eventually. It's been a long time since I felt your warm and ticklish touch. I've been counting the days and figuring out ways to keep from missing you so much. I'll travel underwater in a small steel submarine and tell the whales to sing you tales of all the things I've seen. I'll zoom off in a spaceship on my way to Mars and write you a note. But my pencils would float, so instead I'll spell it with stars. I'll lie down in a meadow on a sunny afternoon, send butterfly kisses and dandelion wishes till the sun gives way to the moon. And should the next day bring with it things scary or unexpected, I will gather my might and send love and light, so you'll always feel protected. And if you're feeling down or blue and your problems seem quite large, you can blow all your troubles into some bubbles and I'll pop them at no extra charge. It doesn't matter where you are, what place, what time of day. If you're not near, I'll still love you, dear. My love won't fade away. My love for you is everywhere, in every little nook, in birds that sing, in the whisper of spring, It's everywhere you look. Until we meet again real soon, I'll wish upon a star. I'm in no race for your embrace. I'll love you from afar. Whether we're loving people up close or from afar, it matters that we love them and that we tell them that and that we show each other that. And sometimes that means being far from each other to help keep one another safe. But know that no matter what, our love can reach that distance. No matter how far off the chickens may run in the yard, they're here with me in my heart. And I hope you're all doing well. Thanks, Mom.
Welcome, chicken.
Bye, everybody.
This is the time in our worship service when we share joys and concerns that are very close to our hearts and to our lives. Our ministerial intern, Jenna Crawford, is still receiving pre-submitted candles at internminister@uuneedham.org by the Thursday Our second pre-submitted candle is from our religious educator, Sarah Elizabeth, a candle of concern for her grandmother, Kay, as she recovers from 2 broken ankles and a serious medication interaction that resulted in an additional hospitalization. She is now home with the chickens and is grateful to be surrounded by the love and support of her family, including Sarah Elizabeth, who joined her in Texas this past week to help care for her. And out. As we hear these words from queer Euro-American UU minister, Reverend Lynn Cox. Spirit of life who draws us together in a web of holy relationships, make your presence known with us and in us and among us. Remind us that we are not alone in history, igniting us with the courage of the living tradition. Remind us that we are not alone in entering the future, anchoring us with patience and perseverance. Remind us that we are not alone in our times of grief and pain, comforting us with your spirit manifest in human hearts and voices. Remind us that we are not alone in joy and wonder, inspiring us to honor and extend the beauty we find in this world. Divine music of the universe, let our hearts beat in diverse and harmonious rhythms, cooperating with an everlasting dance of love. May we move with the rhythms of peace. May we move with the rhythms of compassion. May we move with the rhythms of justice. Source of stars and planets and water and land, open our hearts to all of our neighbors. Open our hearts to a renewal of faith. Open our hands to join together in the work ahead. Amen. Please now join in singing from home or humming here in the sanctuary our meditative response, I know this rose will open. The lyrics are in your emailed and print order of service and at number 396 in your gray hymnals.
I know this
This congregation has been supported by the volunteered time and treasure of its members and friends since its founding in 1711. This is the time in our service when we, the modern stewards of this church, offer what we can to build and sustain the congregation and the world we envision. This month, our collections are being split 50-50 with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, or UUSC. The UUSC is the merged social service organization of the Unitarian Service Committee and the Universalist Service Committee, both founded during World War II to help those escaping Nazi persecution and to support relief efforts after the war. The symbol of our denomination, the flaming chalice, was originally the symbol of the Unitarian Service Committee. The UUSC today supports justice work through local partners around the world, with a special focus on grassroots organizing abroad and legislative advocacy here in the United States. It is also the organizational vehicle for special UU fundraising efforts after natural disasters. To donate to today's offering from here in the building, you can pass your donation to one of the ushers who will be coming around shortly with one of our historic boxes. From home or from your smartphone here in the building, you can use one of 3 different methods to donate. You can use our Text to Give program through the number 37256. You can make a donation through our website, uuneedham.org, or you can mail a check to First Parish at 23 Dedham Avenue. All the details for online or mailed giving are in your print and emailed orders of service. Whichever way you donate, please remember to specify whether it's for the plate collection or your annual pledge. Thank you for everything you are able to give to help support and sustain this congregation and the vital work of our community partners. And many thanks to Grace Rising for our beautiful flowers today. In thanks to everyone who has worked so hard to prepare Sunday services, music, and ways to keep First Parish connected during this time. Please take these next few moments to give what you can and know it will be gratefully received. May the ushers please come forward.
I remember a conversation I had with First Parish's former music director, Irina, in January or February of 2020. We both had young children, and she asked me if I was worried about the mysterious virus making its way through China. Not really, I casually replied. Less than 2 months later, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic, and schools and businesses across the country shut down abruptly. My family's been incredibly fortunate during the past 18 months. My husband Jorge and I both retained our jobs and were able to continue working from home. Our 3 kids received school-issued Chromebooks and iPads and continued engaging with their teachers, first in remote format, later in hybrid fashion, and finally, as of last April, fully in person. The early days of the shutdown were memorable. I started each weekday morning by typing out a family schedule, a complex document piecing together elements from my work schedule, my husband's work schedule, and 3 separate schedules of Zoom calls and designated study periods. While my 6th grader had a full day of Zoom sessions, my 3rd and 1st grader had only several scheduled calls each day. I tried to fill in remaining time with periods of writing, drawing, math flashcards, piano practice, outdoor play, lunch, video calls with grandma and grandpa. Many of these activities required some level of supervision, however, so they needed to be carefully slotted in so that the blocks with the needed supervision didn't overlap with the more important work calls. Our shared morning began with breakfast and a 15-minute period we called Family Scrum, intended to motivate us for the day ahead. Mamma Mia was the soundtrack of choice, as we had watched that movie as a family shortly before shutdown. Forevermore, renditions of Dancing Queen will, for me, conjure up images of our mornings at home during COVID. Despite my efforts to keep the kids busy during my scheduled work calls, I typically found myself Zooming with a whole other world of activities taking place just beyond my screen. My husband carved out a home office space in the basement. I preferred to have some natural light, so I typically set up shop in the kitchen or in one of our bedrooms, but I often found myself displaced as the children roamed about. I remember being so tired at the end of each day, but feeling that I had accomplished so little. I would leave my last block of work time and head to the kitchen to start preparing dinner, only to find a mound of dishes in the sink and on the counter. The increased amount of food and dishes with everyone at home was certainly an adjustment. The kids probably didn't learn very much academically during those early days. I marvel at the parents who somehow managed to actively supervise their children's learning, supplementing the virtual curriculum with additional resources. We were in more of a survival mode, focusing on the basics: food, safety. One of my kids began showing signs of anxiety suddenly and dramatically, coinciding with the shutdown. I read some books, and I eventually found a therapist to help us cope with nighttime fear, temper tantrums, mood swings, refusal to engage in remote school. I've learned a lot about mental health in the past 18 months, and we've tried to normalize discussion of feelings and fears. When school changed from hybrid to full-time in spring of 2021, it was as if a switch flipped. The reintroduction of a structured school day with regular peer interaction brought things back into balance and was healing almost immediately. It's an important reminder of our interconnectedness. We cannot live well without one another.
So at the beginning of the pandemic, I think I was feeling the same things that everybody felt. Uncertainty and fear. The difference from the average person is that Darren and my children were home from the middle of March onward, and my schedule didn't change. As an obstetrician, our patients needed to be seen. And so I got up, went to work, drove through the strange, no traffic streets to the office or the hospital, put on my mask, obsessively washed my hands, hand sanitized, wiped down every surface, and tried my best to continue to do a good job. But it was isolating. Didn't speak to colleagues socially. We didn't eat together. We would talk about patients either over the phone or separated by 6 feet apart. I am someone who doesn't wear a white coat in the office because I don't like the separation that feels with my OB patients. But here I was with a mask on and a face shield, and that separation felt hard. And it was the fear and isolation for my patients was so much more dramatic. They usually would be approaching pregnancy as a time of joy and anticipation with some fear of the unknown. But now it was laced with more constant anxiety and fear and isolation. So patients had to come to their office visits alone, no partners with them, no partners for ultrasounds. They were allowed a partner on labor and delivery, but no extra labor support coaches, no mothers or sisters or friends accompanying them. And they would stay in their labor room, in their postpartum room, and then go home alone without their community. They only had the option of having family members or friends join them and provide them with support if they were willing to take the risk for that person, as well as the risk that that person might bring the virus into their home. And these, fears and anxieties and isolation were only amplified for my patients who had COVID during their pregnancies and during their deliveries. And I was fortunate to not have to take care of women who were critically ill with COVID during their pregnancies. But the patients that I took care of who were sick with COVID while they were delivering had to deal with all the staff around them being gowned, gloved, masked, face shield, and being told to spend the most minimal amount of time possible and still provide adequate care to the patient. And we oftentimes still spent a lot of time in their rooms. It's what a laboring patient needs. So even though it was frightening, we still did our best to try to be by their side and provide the support that they didn't have because they weren't allowed the additional supports. And so we still tried to hold their hand and coach them through it and tried to give them as much information as we had and tried to help talk with them and help them make the difficult decision after delivery about did they separate from their newborn so that they didn't have to run the risk of transmitting COVID to them. Incredibly difficult decisions.
The Rico Fung family was unable to record their story. It's an interesting one because they had a breakthrough case in September, but we'll have to wait to hear that another time. February 28th, 2020. I returned home after a week of cross-country skiing in Vermont. And then it started. I marked my calendar on Friday, March 13th as Coronavirus Shutdown Day. Note, that was the day Breonna Taylor was killed. That was also the day that my grandsons, Daniel and Jason, came home from UMass for the duration. We were letting it sink in that something very unusual was happening and that it was going to change the way we live. I started to practice social distancing and I became vigilant about washing hands. I got jigsaw puzzles and books for entertainment. The news was nonstop about the virus, with conflicting information. Lies from Trump and more believable bulletins from CDC. I subscribed to Zoom and began to set up meetings. I also enjoyed going to virtual church with many of you. We were creating new ways to connect and build community. April 2nd, my daughter, her husband, and their 2 sons got a rescue dog. Her name is Katie. She will prove to be an important, life-affirming force in the family. Sunday, April 12th. This is not going away. The number of cases and deaths are rising. I realize that I am living in a bubble. I am healthy and have everything I need. May 3rd. I became part of a pod with my daughter and her family. Debbie and Glenn are working from home. Daniel and Jason are doing college in the bedroom. We decided that it was safe to be together, even though we live in separate houses. It is so nice to get hugs. May 31st. Needham held a Black Lives Matter vigil by lining up along Highland Avenue from Christ Church to St. Joe's. Our eyes are wide open now, if they weren't already. Every societal inequity has become glaringly obvious. July. My much-beloved annual sailing adventure on Schooner Mary Day was canceled. I focused on my daily walks and many Zoom meetings. November 7th, the presidential race has been called for Biden. Big relief. January 6th, 2021, heightened anxiety. January 20th, 2021, another deep breath. Wasn't Amanda Gorman beautiful? February 4th, after struggling with the process of getting an appointment, I drove to Gillette Stadium to get my Moderna vaccination. Not surprisingly, my cross-country ski trip was canceled. March 4th, back to Gillette for my second shot. July, a bright spot. Janet Klein and I were able to sail on Schooner Mary Day from July 11th to the 17th. I forgot all about COVID that week. Then the Delta variant hit. So discouraging. October 22nd, got my booster shot, yay. November, morning walks continue to be very important. Contact with friends for walks and small gatherings are more frequent now. And here we are, with hybrid Sunday worship, yahoo! I feel more confident that locally we are highly vaccinated and can move more freely, but I find that I am reluctant to leave the comfort of my home for large public gatherings. I am so grateful for my First Parish community and my family as we support each other on this journey.
Each of our stories matter and are part of the interwoven web of our beloved congregational community. Many thanks to all of you who shared your stories. strengthening our empathy and amazement with one another and helping us heal from the last year and a half of relative isolation and disconnection. For a church as old as ours, we know that this is not the first pandemic our community has weathered together. In recognition of its centennial, Euro-American health communications specialist Douglas Jordan wrote a long article for our nation's Centers for Disease Control about the 1918 influenza pandemic, often misnomered as the Spanish flu despite its origin in Kansas. Jordan wrote, "The 1918 H1N1 flu pandemic killed an estimated 50 million people worldwide and an estimated 675,000 people in the United States, lowering the average life expectancy in the United States by more than 12 years. Jordan described a modern experiment in which mice were infected with the scientifically resuscitated 1918 influenza virus. The researchers discovered that the 1918 flu produced 50 times the amount of virus in the lungs and was at least 100 times more lethal than modern influenza viruses. Jordan listed many additional factors contributing to the virulence of the 1918 pandemic. First, medical technology and countermeasures at the time were limited or non-existent, with no vaccines, no antibiotics, and no mechanical ventilation devices developed yet, whereas today we have ventilators, antibiotics, and vaccines in development for even potential pandemics. Second, there were no coordinated pandemic plans on the national level, whereas today we have organizations like the CDC and the World Health Organization. And three, World War I was still raging in 1918, with troops in overcrowded quarters moved frequently, and 30% of U.S. physicians deployed to military service. In Boston, where the influenza outbreak began in September 1918, a PBS special recounted that a Win the War for Freedom parade had marched through the streets of Boston featuring 4,000 men. This rousing display of patriotism did little to end the war and much to spread the deadly flu. Within the first month of its appearance in Boston, 1,000 Bostonians had died of H1N1 and schools abruptly closed. According to a 2014 essay from our town historian, Dr. Gloria Grice, our local hospital, then the Glover, now BID Needham, had only been founded 6 years prior to the influenza pandemic. It was constantly in debt, and Needhamites weren't so sure that it was worthwhile to have a hospital in town when there were such good medical facilities in Boston. But within a week of the first recorded influenza case in Needham, another 200 residents became sick. An emergency health committee was organized by the select board and established quarantine procedures, pressed the local tradesmen into service to expand the hospital's plumbing and heating systems, tripled the number of beds, hired additional doctors and nurses, set up an emergency kitchen, and dragooned 25 local drivers into using their cars as ambulances and transports. The outbreak subsided in Needham by January 1919, and there were only 22 deaths among the several hundred cases, thanks to the Emergency Health Committee and Glover Hospital. The hospital's youthfulness in town was not questioned again. First Parish was quite involved with the response to the influenza pandemic, though the church never closed. Again, we didn't know as much about virology then as we do now. Our members, Jeanette Anderson and Muriel Gaiman, found in our archives that the service clubs at First Parish were constantly raising money for influenza relief through rummage and church gift fairs, concerts and dances at local venues, and lawn parties at members' homes. 3 women's groups, the King's Daughters Circle, the Lend a Hand Club, and the Women's Alliance, each contributed to public health efforts in unique ways. For those of you who have been around First Parish for a while, you'd recognize many of the women's names: Carolyn Gay Mills, Teresa Kingsbury, Ada Gay Fuller, the early 20th century matriarchs and stalwarts of this church. The King's Daughters conducted a dizzying array of fundraisers for local organizations impacted by the flu and contributed to Glover's Emergency Kitchen. The Lend a Hand Club primarily sponsored a book mission, sending children's books, magazines, Bibles, leaflets, and postcards to Glover Hospital and to the Central Lend a Hand Society office in Boston. And the Women's Alliance donated money and talent to Glover and New England hospitals, mending and sewing hospital bags, dressings, and baby clothes. In 1918, our spiritual ancestors were fortunate to have the Glover and a dedicated Needham community doing their best with the information they had to curb the influenza pandemic and aid those suffering from the virus. And humanity was fortunate that the 1918 pandemic ended in the summer of 1919, not because we had developed a vaccine, but because the virus didn't mutate sufficiently to reinfect those who had survived it. It fizzled away. Douglas Jordan's CDC article written in 2018 said, "A comparable death rate has not been observed in any of the known flu seasons or pandemics that have occurred either prior or following the 1918 pandemic. This perhaps begs the question of whether a high-severity pandemic on the scale of 1918 could occur in modern times." He continued, "If a severe pandemic happened today, it would likely overwhelm healthcare infrastructure. Hospitals and doctors' offices would struggle to meet demand from the number of patients requiring care. Such an event would require significant increases in the manufacture, distribution, and supply of medications, products, and life-saving medical equipment such as mechanical ventilators. Businesses and schools would struggle to function, and even basic services could be impacted." Well, 2 weeks ago, humanity reached the grim milestone of the COVID-19 pandemic, killing 5 million people worldwide. Recently, Black public health researcher and professor Dr. Ogbanaya Omenka said that the United States is likely to surpass 800,000 COVID-19 deaths by Christmas. And unlike the H1N1 virus, COVID-19 is mutating and is successfully infecting even those who were vaccinated or previously infected. I'm sure I don't need to say it, but I'll say it anyway. This is horrifying and totally avoidable, given our modern scientific knowledge, the incredible wealth nations like ours have and could share, and growing access to proven precautions such as vaccines and masks. First Parish, along with the rest of the world, is in the process of surviving another debilitating global pandemic. Between the coronavirus, police violence, unemployment, an inadequate and inequitable healthcare system, the worsening climate crisis, and the January 6th insurrection, 2020 and 2021 have been hard years for our local, national, and global communities, to put it mildly. Euro-American journalist and my friend from Harvard Divinity School, Joshua Eaton, wrote for our denominational magazine, The UU World, that the past 20 months have felt apocalyptic in the original Greek sense of apocalypsis or revelation. Like the visions of the Christian scriptures figure St. John on Patmos, these past months pulled back a curtain and showed us unsettling things about ourselves as a country. Things with roots that go much deeper than this pandemic or even a presidency. The apocalypsis we have seen in the past 20 months has shown us how very resistant systems of oppression, division, and selfishness are to change, even when change would literally save hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of lives. During a time of such great stress and confusion, it is challenging to maintain our covenant and our love with our families, our friends, fellow parishioners, not even thinking about our neighbors or strangers or those who refuse to promote and do what is necessary to protect the vulnerable. I keep thinking about this funny little song from last year from Black TikToker Heather Shellen. "The pandemic isn't over just because you're over it." Like our spiritual ancestors before us, you all have done so much to help flatten the curve and protect the vulnerable, staying home and outdoors, creating small pods, wearing and making masks, washing your hands, getting tested, getting vaccinated. I pray it's enough. I don't have an answer to how humanity will get where we hope to go. With the coronavirus pandemic under control, the earth not hurtling towards an unsustainable temperature rise, and justice and equity for all peoples. But I root myself in our spiritual traditions to find the courage and resilience to keep going on. From Universalism, I listen to first parishioners' stories and remember the old adage derived from 20th century Scottish minister and author Reverend John Watson: be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. I remember the call of Universalism to love others as the holy loves all. And from Unitarianism, I remember that I have free will in how I conduct myself, and that our charitably minded spiritual ancestors are excellent examples of open-hearted conduct. I remember that I am called to water the seeds of compassion and justice within me. Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh explained this well. He wrote, "Our mind is a field in which every kind of seed is sown, seeds of compassion, joy, and hope, seeds of sorrow, fear, and difficulties. Every day, our thoughts, our words, our deeds plant new seeds in these fields of our consciousness, and what these seeds generate become the substance of our life. There are both wholesome and unwholesome seeds in our mind field, sown by ourselves and our parents, our schooling, ancestors, and society. The practice of mindfulness helps us identify all the seeds in our consciousness, and with that knowledge, we can choose to water only the ones that are most beneficial. As we cultivate the seeds of joy and transform the seeds of suffering in ourselves, understanding, love, and compassion will flower." I invite us to take a deep breath in and let it out, and to bring to mind the fields of our minds where seeds of compassion, joy, and hope, as well as the seeds of sorrow, fear, and difficulties have been sown. In the midst of apocalypsis and ongoing stress and confusion, unlike what many of us have ever experienced before, how do we continue to water those seeds of compassion, joy, and hope? I believe when our spiritual watering cans are running low or weeds have infested the flowers we wish to cultivate, that we can rely on the spiritual source that enlivens each of us and our values, and we can rely on one another. If we only remember to open our ears and our mouths and reach out our hands. May this be so. Blessed be, and amen. Many thanks to our wonderful guest musician, Jean Huang. Thank you for offering your gifts to First Parish this morning. As we close our worship today, remember that all are invited to our social hours on Zoom and in the parish hall. Remember that for social hour in the parish hall, you must keep your mask over your nose and mouth, and that you shouldn't linger in the hallway between the sanctuary and parish hall, as that space is not ventilated. For those of you on Zoom, we're aware that we had some sound issues this morning. We also had them in the worship cafe, and we will continue to work on that. The worship committee and the staff team is also aware we've been running over while we've been switching to this new format. We'll work on that too. Keep a careful eye out for emails from First Parish and follow us on social media so you can keep up with opportunities for connection for all ages throughout the week and with updates on our reopening and COVID-19 precautions. You can sign up for our weekly email, the Bell Notes, by clicking on subscribe to newsletter on our website, uuneedham.org. Please remember that this afternoon from 12 to 4, there's the 10th annual Needham Diversity Summit online. You can still register and receive the Zoom link if you do it now. I'll be on a panelist of Needhamites who are all working for equity and diversity in our community. We also have our grief and loss support group gathering at 12:15 on Zoom. Later this week, we have virtual lunch bunch on Wednesday, Writing Escapes Vespers and Meditation Ministry Thursday, and Creative Escapes and Fridays for Future on Friday. On Saturday at 4, the pre-recorded Needham Interfaith Trans Day of Remembrance Memorial Vigil will debut on our congregation's YouTube page and social media. Our caregivers support group will meet on Zoom next Sunday at 12:30. And don't forget to talk with Rick Vincent if you have any questions about Generic Ministries' annual jacket and coat drive, which is going on now. Please remember, if you fall ill or need any pastoral support, to reach out to me, to Jenna, and to our pastoral care team and caring crew via phone or email, and to reach out to our office administrator, Susanna Whitman, if you have trouble signing into the Bell Notes or logging into our directory, The Realm. We always extinguish our chalice with words promising to carry its flame in our hearts until we are together again, no matter how long it is until we are all together again. Please join me from home or here in the building in saying those words written by Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Elizabeth Sally Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing hymn, Wo Ya Ya, was written by Ghanaian drummer Sol Amarfio and was popularized in the 1970s by Osibisa, a musical group of Ghanaian and Caribbean musicians. Our hymnal's arrangement comes from Black Unitarian Universalist artist Yese Barnwell of the all-women African-American a cappella group Sweet Honey in the Rock. You can find the lyrics in your emailed and print order of service or at number 1020 in your teal hymnals. Please join in singing from home or humming here in the building, Wo Ya Ya.
We know we will. It will be all we know.
As we close our worship, please take these words from modern Euro-American UU minister, Reverend Anya Samler-Michael, with you as a benediction. When faced with a challenge such as this, we can turn toward each other or we can turn against. We can ignore the cries of our neighbors or we can let them cry into the arms of our witness. We can respond with indifference to systemic injustice or we can commit to its undoing. Good souls, tales will be told about how we responded when this particular hell was visited upon our earth. Let it be said by generations to come that when the pain of our separation was revealed, we moved closer to the promised land of our beloved community. Our service begins when our service ends. Blessed be, and amen.